This is Grind Diaries. This is where we tell the business hustle stories of those who didn't win because they were lucky, connected, or born brilliant, but because they were simply too stubborn, too focused, and too resilient to ever quit. Today, we open the diary of a man who was turned down by over 200 investors, who was rejected by his own employers, and who went from a poverty-stricken New York housing project to building a global empire that defined a new kind of third place on Earth. His name is Howard Schultz. One day, this same man would make one of the most shocking decisions in modern business history. He would shut down every single Starbucks store in the United States. Thousands of stores. Locked doors. No coffee sold that day. Not because the company was failing, but because he believed something far more important was at risk. But that moment was still decades away. Because this story didn't start in a boardroom. It started in a struggling Brooklyn apartment. Howard wasn't born with a coffee-stained silver spoon. Born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York, his life was defined by the relentless struggle of public housing. He lived in a neighborhood where the idea of success was an impossible fiction. His father was a truck driver, constantly battling to keep a job, providing a meager existence that kept the family hovering just above the line of destitution. When Howard was just 7 years old, his father broke his ankle at work. There was no health insurance, no workers' compensation, just bills, pain, and absolute humiliation. That moment wasn't just a childhood memory, it was the foundational trauma that would eventually build a $100 billion company. He promised himself then and there that he would one day build a company where people were treated with respect and dignity, even the ones wearing the apron. He wasn't a genius. He's the first to admit that. He said, "I'm not a genius. I'm just someone who's been able to see around corners and stay with it when others gave up." For Howard, college was not a choice. It was an escape route earned through a football scholarship. After graduating, he paid his dues in sales, eventually landing a job selling coffee makers. This was not the dream. It was the daily, unforgiving operating manual for survival. That sales job led him to a tiny, obscure coffee bean retailer in Seattle. The name, Starbucks. When he flew out, he didn't see a coffee shop. He saw a warehouse selling beans and equipment. But Howard had recently returned from a trip to Italy, where he witnessed the true power of the espresso bar. A place where people weren't just drinking coffee, they were connecting, talking, and living. It was an atmosphere. A feeling. That's when the vision hit him. He said, "I wanted to build a third place between work and home." He tried to convince the Starbucks founders to expand, to serve actual espresso drinks. But the men who mastered the bean were absolutely immovable. They said no. The vision was rejected by the very company he wanted to transform. So he walked away. He quit the job, but he did not quit the dream. In 1985, he scraped together everything he had and started his own coffee bar called Il Giornale. He went to investors, armed with his passion. He heard the word over 200 times. And if that kind of story inspires you, take 1 second to like and subscribe, because this is exactly what we do here on Grind Diaries. Most entrepreneurs quit after a handful of rejections. Howard Schultz endured 200 rejections. He chose to rise every single time. He refused to let the sheer volume of rejection become his verdict. He once declared, "In life, you can't let anyone tell you no. You can't let anyone tell you your dreams are impossible." In 1987, he secured funding and bought Starbucks for $3.8 million, merging it with his venture. From that moment, he set out to build something the world had never seen, focused on one core vow: character was the ultimate capital. And if you believe business is built on character, not shortcuts, you're in the right place. Subscribe now. He famously said, "Starbucks isn't about coffee. It's about human connection." He defied industry standards and gave his employees, even part-time baristas, comprehensive healthcare benefits and stock options. That single decision built a loyalty that no advertising budget could ever purchase. It transformed a simple business transaction into a meaningful daily ritual. But building a vision is one thing. Scaling it across a nation is another battle entirely. As Starbucks began expanding across the United States in the 1990s, Howard faced a new kind of pressure. Rapid growth meant massive risk. Stores were opening faster than the culture could travel. Critics began to question the model. Some analysts argued that Americans would never embrace expensive coffee on a daily basis. To many on Wall Street, the idea sounded ridiculous. $5 coffee? A cafe culture in a country obsessed with speed and convenience? It didn't make sense on paper. But Howard wasn't building a spreadsheet. He was building an experience. In 1992, Starbucks went public. Overnight, the pressure multiplied. Investors wanted growth. Analysts wanted profits. Expansion was happening at a breathtaking pace, and every new store carried the risk of diluting the very culture he was trying to protect. Howard later admitted that those years were some of the most difficult of his leadership. He was constantly balancing two opposing forces, growth and soul. If you've ever tried to build something and felt that tension, you already understand this story. Subscribe if that's you. If Starbucks grew too slowly, competitors would catch up. If it grew too fast, it could lose the very magic that made people love it. So Howard doubled down on the one thing he believed would never fail: the people wearing the green apron. He invested heavily in training. He insisted that every barista understand the craft of coffee, the importance of connection, and the simple act of remembering a customer's name. Because to Howard Schultz, Starbucks was never supposed to be just a coffee chain. It was supposed to be a community. And protecting that idea would become the defining battle of his leadership. The empire he built is now a global powerhouse with over 30,000 stores worldwide. But the grind didn't stop at the top. In 2008, Starbucks was struggling. Sales were down, and the brand was losing the soul he had poured into it. Howard returned to SEO and took the dramatic, uncompromising step of shutting down all U.S. stores for one day, not to save money, but to retrain every barista. To remind them of the core mission. He said, "We're not in the coffee business serving people. We're in the people business serving coffee." He understood that success is not a destination. It's a constant recommitment to the foundation. Howard Schultz's life offers us three timeless, powerful truths. 1. Rejection is simply redirection. 2. Conscience is a multiplier. Treating people with dignity is the highest yield investment you can make. 3. Your background is not your verdict. Howard Schultz heard the word "no" more than 200 times. Investors rejected him. His own employers rejected his vision. And the world told him that a poor kid from public housing had no business building a global brand. But rejection does not end a dream. Quitting does. Howard could have accepted the limits life handed him. A struggling family. A father with no safety net. A childhood where dignity was a luxury. But instead of accepting the system, he chose to build a better one. From a broken ankle in a small Brooklyn apartment, to a company that changed how the world experiences coffee. From a boy who watched his father suffer without health care, to a leader who made sure even part-time employees received it. The lesson is simple. You don't need permission to pursue a vision. You don't need a perfect background. And you don't need the approval of everyone around you. You need conviction. You need resilience. And you need the courage to keep going when the world keeps saying no. Because sometimes the greatest opportunities hide behind rejection. The world sees 30,000 stores. But the real story is the 200 rejections that came first. So whatever is in your hands today, however small it may look, use it. Because the page can flip at any moment. And when it does, your grind becomes your legacy. If you like stories like this, check out the story of the man who started with nothing but 200 naira, was betrayed by his own family, and still built one of the biggest empires in Africa. From a 7-year-old sleeping on a shop floor to the exclusive distributor of Rolls-Royce on an entire continent. This has been Grind Diaries. Business hustle stories. If you want more real stories of people who built extraordinary things through consistency, not privilege, then turn the next page with us. Your grind is your story, and your story is not finished.